Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello there, welcome along to Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and business owners. Now, on today's show, we're going to be discussing the 12 pillars to growing a successful business, not just for the business sake, but also for your sake as well. It's going to be an interesting program as always. Joining me in the studio is Rupert Honeywood from the Business Growth Bureau. Rupert, lovely to have you on the programme today. Thank you very much for joining us. For those people that don't know who the Business Growth Bureau is and what you're all about, please do tell all.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for that, and thanks for inviting me onto the show. Well, basically, we set out originally to help clients win more business.
No, to me.
And sorry about that. Okay. To win more business, and but fundamentally, what I really love doing is working with directors of companies to help them to really grow and accelerate the development within their business and also beyond.
Now, your business has changed, isn't it? And I think this is what's so intriguing about it. A lot of people will know you as somebody that would come along and say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build on your LinkedIn profile, I'm going to grow that, I'm going to qualify that, and I'm going to present you with hot leads. Now, it just seems that everybody and their grandmother is doing that now. Your business has moved away from that. You're still using that as a tool, I understand that, but so how has the business changed?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, that. In fact, fundamentally there's a saying that I use quite a bit: if nothing changes, everything stays the same. And it sounds such an obvious thing, but there is a danger that if you don't respond to market conditions, you end up by being falling behind. Now, in real terms, from a technological point of view and a service point of view, we always like to be ahead, certainly be with the game, or if not ahead of the game. But the actual market's changed quite a bit. So the whole LinkedIn social media space has become much more commoditized. There are people out there offering the service at perhaps a lower cost, and we're not really in that space. We're much more of a premium provider, providing a really good service to clients. Also, they want exceptional results. So we're still offering as a service, but it's actually more by request now, and we're a lot more selective over the clients that we take on. And the reason for that is we also have to make sure that people are also very strong on following up the opportunities. So if we work with the so-called 3 cogs, lead generation, prospect nurturing, sales optimization, if any one of those 3 cogs is not turning, you've got a problem. Where we can see a problem sometimes is when those hot leads are passed over to our clients. Clients can be really struggle sometimes following those through, or they just are not suitably trained in the whole sales process.
Well, there seems to be a resistance, doesn't there, when you give somebody, look, here's a hot lead, you better phone that today. They'll always phone it tomorrow. It's always, I can put that off until a better time. And they don't just get on with it, do they?
No, exactly. And the thing is as well, people forget that the rate of decay on a lead is very fast. So if I put my hand up and say, look, I'm interested in having a conversation, and you happen to sit on it for a few days, then actually that person very quickly forgets why they want to speak with you in the first place. So really, time is of the essence. And the other thing we see happening a lot is people can become too reliant on social media just by itself, because it's much easier than having a physical conversation. But fundamentally, if someone's actually asking for more information or to have a sales-based conversation, you really should be taking that conversation offline as quickly as possible, turning that into a phone call. Bear in mind they're asking for that conversation, in which case it's not a case of selling anymore, it's much more about meeting a client's need. So even someone who's struggling with sales, if they can at least have a normal, intelligent conversation with someone, it really is very straightforward. And that's the bit we're really passionate about. If we can make a difference, not just on the first part, but on the second part, then great. But actually, we see our mission being a lot bigger than that fundamentally now.
Why do you think people are so hesitant when it comes to picking the phone up and talking to people? I've got 2 questions, actually. That one, and the other one is, do you think anybody really does make proper sales leads that work on LinkedIn? Are the only people making money the people that are telling you how to make money?
That's a lovely question. Yes, no, definitely. I mean, we ourselves, not surprisingly, have got a continual supply of leads and opportunities coming through. In fact, we've just literally filled up 4 events in a period of 1 week through a LinkedIn campaign for ourselves. So, and that's just a really good example. We're running now another one in December. So a lot of fun can be had with that. But it really does stem with this whole issue of follow-up. And the other thing to bear in mind with something like LinkedIn, it applies to other social media platforms as well, is that when you're reaching out to someone at that particular point in time may not be looking for that widget, product or service that you have to sell. So a lot of it's about timing, or if they are looking for it now, they may have a process they have to go through internally before they can actually commit to it. So the lead it can be a little bit longer sometimes to convert that sale, because they may not be in a buying moment at that precise point in time. But because you've built the relationship up in advance, and you've done if you do that the right way, what happens, you then are front of mind. And also invariably, instead of being in a highly competitive situation, which you might be if you're doing a pay-per-click campaign, because they're just shopping around perhaps around 5 or 6 different suppliers, you're possibly the only one they're speaking to. And because you've already broken through that relationship of trust, they already want to transact and buy from you. When they are in that buying moment, what better place can you be in?
Okay, then, we've talked about LinkedIn and what the company did. And once again, you're a man that actually comes up with processes and everything like that. So, we had the 3 cogs.
Love the cogs.
Now, we've gone from the cogs, from the 3s up to the 12 pillars.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit more about this. First of all, conceptually, how did you come up with this? And how is this different from what you were doing before? It's hugely different, isn't it?
It is quite different, but actually I would say it's more of an evolution, because we still offer that service. In fact, ironically enough, as soon as we started to announce we were doing something a bit different, we immediately got 2 other sales in which we weren't expecting, which was really nice to have. But actually, with getting leads, it's very transactional. And so what personally motivates me as a person is about feeling I'm having a massive impact on the CEOs or leadership team of companies or organisations we work with. And I love working based on a relationship of trust and feeling I'm making a personal difference. And I know my other colleagues do as well. So, and I've been also a big beneficiary of many training programs, mentoring programs. I've sometimes run some of those. Equally, I've been a member. And some of those have been life-changing for some of either for myself or for other people who've been in the room. And what I want to do is to actually take a lot more of that and then start to really build on depth. And I thought, well, what is really strong? Well, I wasn't going to come up with tombstones, because a certain leader of a Labour Party a few years ago came up with that one, and we all know where that went. But I thought if it's, something that's very strong by definition are pillars, and fundamentally we see there's being 12 pillars that actually underpin what you're doing personally and in your business, if that makes sense.
It's very interesting you say that about pillars, because when we were working on the graphics for this program, we went looking for pillars. And of course, many organisations and religions as well are based around a number of pillars. And it's an interesting way forward. Now, a lot of people would say to have 12 pillars in your process is a lot. 3, when you were talking about the cogs, works very well. You're talking about the triplets. But 12 pillars, I mean, if you look at some of the religions, it is 5 pillars. You've just seemed to take the whole thing to task and gone, right, 12 pillars it is then. Is that not too many? Because people will get lost sometimes perhaps in what it's representing.
Yes, and it is a good point that, I think really from our point of view, the first 2 pillars really relate to you as a person, as an individual, because fundamentally, when the chips are down, is that personal bit that will always drive you through. So it's really, in a sense, the 2 are to do with what personally motivates you and drives you in your plan. The other 10 relate really to you and your business. And it really, with a business, as much as we'd love to think it actually is based around 3 or 4 pillars or 5 pillars, and probably there are 4 or 5 fundamental ones. Really, actually, it's a case of having multiple foundations, as it were, or pillars, to make sure that every part of your business is properly underpinned and is in a position to move
Well,
ahead.
what I was just going to say is I think we're not going to tease you on this. We're not going to go on and on and sort of tell you that there are pillars and then not tell you what they are. The first two then that we're going to examine are your motivation, that's number one, your why, your motivation, and number two, your personal 5-year plan. Now, let's start with the 5-year plan first of all. 5-year plans where I don't know what's going to happen later today, let alone in 5 years' time. When you say that, what do you really mean in essence to somebody? Is it the aspirations and their dreams that we're looking at? Are we asking the universe and saying, in 5 years' time, this is what I'd like?
Yeah, it's a really good one. Obviously, over the next, what you should be really 100% clear on is what you're wanting to see happen and where you can make a difference over the next 12 months. But like anything else, if you're going to be driving a car, in order to know where you're going to end up, you need to put the postcode or direct zip code into your sat-nav, and hopefully it will take you to your destination. Now, you may take a few wrong paths along the way, but that sat-nav will always get you there eventually. So the reason we say a 5-year plan is that you've really got to know fundamentally where you're heading up. And then sometimes it's a case of actually working backwards. So once you work backwards, that will help you to actually then determine what steps you need to put in place to get there.
The people you talk to, do they do that? Do they think that through? Do they understand that concept?
Not necessarily, no. And I would say a lot of people we come across actually really struggle with what personally motivates them now or even over the next 12 months.
Well, let's talk about motivation as well.
Yes.
What about motivation? We've only got a minute or so on this. But,
Yes.
But motivation, do people truly understand what their why is?
Many do. There's equally a lot that don't. And for anyone, if your listeners out there, obviously a lot of people probably have known of Simon Sinek. He's a master at this, and I know you've probably read his stuff, viewed his stuff many times. And but actually, again, it goes back to this: any personal challenges you have or business challenges, if your why is very strongly aligned with what your personal goals are, invariably that will actually help you get to the destination, because it's the part within you that's always driving you all the time that helps you to get there, if that makes sense.
It does make sense indeed. We're going to be talking more to Rupert Honeywood in just a few moments' time here on this edition of Business Connections Live. We're going to be looking at your business 5-year plan, your brand assets that you have, your products, your markets, an important one, your marketing plan and your social selling blueprint. Can ask, is that important? Your board, your leaders, your teams, your systems, your finance, your assets, your scalability. All to come on this. That's a lot to get through, actually. All to come through on this edition of Business Connections Live. By the way, you can watch the programme on LinkedIn. If you're watching us on YouTube at the moment, you can go to LinkedIn. An old friend, an old colleague of mine, actually, from the States, Bill Green. Hello there, Bill. Thank you very much for joining us on today's program. Bill Green is one of the foremost market-leading on-screen talents in America. So, Bill, it's great to have your company on this edition of Business Connections Live. Would love to do a show with you sometime, transatlantically, across the internet or whatever. That would be fantastic. And don't forget, if you'd like to be on the program, you can get in touch with us here at the studio. I'll tell you how to do that in just a few moments' time here on this edition of Business Connections Live. Let's go back a week now, shall we? Last week's show, we talked to Rachel Taplin. She's a businesswoman and entrepreneur about how to share your stories, articles and comments with the UK media. Real opportunities. Really interesting this because Linda, the co-director of Business Connections Live, she was on BBC South this week, and it does truly work. One appearance on television and you'll be talking to more people than you will meet in your lifetime. Great show last week with Rachel. She was in her Birmingham office talking to us here in our London studios. It was a really good show, and if you want to watch the entire program, go to the website. But with the key highlights, here's Rachel Taplin on last week's edition of Business Connections Live. On today's show, we're going to be discussing how to share your stories, articles and comments with the UK media. And a great guest on today's programme. Let me see how she describes herself. It says here, she is a well-known businesswoman and entrepreneur. Her determination is commended and respected at the highest levels, and she has recently been recognised as one of the top 50 UK inspirational women in the UK. My guest on today's show is Rachel Taplin.
I'm a business owner and entrepreneur first and foremost, and I've always worked in the media, and I've just got really good at doing publicity for my business, and now I've helped thousands of business owners across the country achieve the same. Put it into context for you, there's over 44,000 media outlets. So a media outlet is like a TV channel like yourself, or a radio station or a newspaper, and there's over 70,000 journalists in the UK. So people are always looking for content, stories and expert comments, and literally every single week we help businesses connect to journalists and get success. I teach people just connect to radio producers that are looking for stories on the BBC, and you could be on radio within a couple of hours. So yes, it's even more accessible now than it was way back when I first started. The biggest number one mistake I think people make, and I interview lots of editors now and producers of radio stations and TV channels, and they all say the same message. PR is about making an emotional connection. It's about telling a story. It's not selling your business. So advertising sells, PR tells. So if you remember to tell a story, make that emotional connection, even if you're B2B or you're in an industry sector, you want the story behind it. They're not interested in it's the so what. They're not interested about your business and what you do. They want the story behind it. So the best thing to do is to think about where you want to get featured, who is your audience, and have a look. So if you want to be in the Financial Times or a trade industry sector magazine, have a look at their headlines. What are the lengths of their headlines? And you need to kind of mirror them. Are they sensationalized? Are they technical? Are they in layman's terms? So, just mirror the length of it, but no, short and concise. I think it gets it across. It's not too long. You just need to summarize it really to the point and put your big point forward. If you've been on, Dragon's Den, or you've been The Apprentice, or whatever you've done with your business, you want to grab their attention with that. Make sure that you're leveraging your PR, because if you've just been on a local radio show, you could be on the nationals within, half a day or that very same day. Or if you've been in the local regionals, it could snowball into a national news story. So definitely leverage your PR. What you don't want is all your hard work and you've got a great story for it really to just land on the news desk, because yes, it probably will get looked at, but so will 200, 300, 400 other press releases. You want to send it to the health journalist or the manufacturing writer or the business editor, so that it lands to the right people. So you can literally just pick up the phone and do it the hard way and ask, do you have a property journalist or a health writer? The smaller the publications, especially some of the trade, they might only have 4 or 5 journalists working there, so they tend to work across the board. But the largest national magazines, you need to find out who to speak to. Thank you. So my name is Rachel Taplin, and my company's mediamatchmaker.co.uk. So I inspire people on how to do their own PR and connect you to the journalists. The key takeaways from today is to make sure you make the emotional connection. PR is all about telling your story, not selling your business. So make sure you tell, not sell your business. The other connection is take time to connect to the right type of journalists. You don't really want your press release just to end up on the newsroom. You want to go to the manufacturing editor or the beauty editor or the fashion writer, to just take that bit of time to find out the right type of journalist that you want. And also make sure you match wherever you want to get featured. Are your customers there? Are your prospects there? There's no point in going onto radio or into a newspaper, or you're going into a magazine like Men's Health if you're targeting women. Think about making sure the media outlet targets actually your customers, and make sure your message reflects that audience. So take the time to read the headlines of the newspapers. How long, how short are they? Are they technical or are they in layman's terms? And obviously get your key messages across. PR is about an end in mind. What are your key messages? You're not there to just there for their sake and sharing your story. You're there to get a few key messages. So what is it you're trying to achieve? I'm trying to tell you that go to Media Matchmaker, sign up for your free VIP media pass and download everything free for 30 days. And hopefully then we'll inspire you to do your own PR. What's your key message? And enjoy it. PR is fun. It's the most amazing way to get new customers and raise your profile and build credibility. So give it a go.
Just a lovely lady, Rachel Taplin there on last week's edition of Business Connections Live. And don't forget, if you want to watch the entire programme, go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. By the way, if you're thinking to yourself, what a great way of getting my message out there. If you're a business, if you're an organisation, trade organisation perhaps, and you're thinking, well, wouldn't it be great to come on here but I don't think I have maybe perhaps the skills to do it. What we're talking about doing at the moment is putting together a day where we'll do media training for half the day, and then we'll create those assets in the afternoon. We'll create a program around the learnings, the way that we've identified what the key things are that you need to talk about. If you want more details about that, get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live. If you'd like to be a guest on the program, the same applies. It's dead easy to do that. All you got to do is drop us an email to studio@businessconnectionslive.com. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, or better still, as Rupert would suggest, pick up the phone and give us a ring on 01784 256 777. Don't forget, you can follow our stream of consciousness. You can even DM us on Twitter if you wish, at BCL Business TV. You can watch the program and leave your comments as well on Facebook. You can also connect with me and also leave your comments on the program on LinkedIn as well. We are on LinkedIn Live at the moment. We get great response from that. More about that in just a few moments' time. But the best place to go for over 270 great business programs with some of the UK's leading experts, then just go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. Interesting, talking to Rupert today, who I've always considered to be a LinkedIn guru. Another LinkedIn guru who I do suggest you go to his website and have a look is John Calvert. And if you go and watch the program on LinkedIn, you'll see his name pop up. But do check out John Calvert. What he has forgotten about LinkedIn, like Rupert, what they have forgotten about LinkedIn is more than we will ever know. So have a look at John. John, great. Thank you very much for your kind comments, and we look forward to maybe having you back on the program in the near future. A great guy. That's John Calvert. Okay, Rupert, back to you. You are watching Business Connections Live. We're talking about the 12 pillars to growing a successful business. We've kind of looked about personal motivation. That's going to come up again, and also your 5-year plan. And it seems that we're looking inwardly at the moment. Where do we go to next? What's number 3?
Right. Well, it is really the five-year plan. Now, that sounds as if it's going to be quite an onerous task. It really doesn't need to be. Obviously, if you are trying to raise money from a bank or raise equity-based investment, then and obviously then you will need to put together potentially quite a substantive document or series of documents. But actually in the vast majority of cases it's just more a case that we need to have something for ourselves and for our leadership team, which then becomes effectively your sat-nav, or it gives you a sense of direction of where you're going. Now this could be a 2 or 3 page document. It doesn't need to be anything very heavy. The other way you could do it very easily is using some mind mapping tools. For example, you can either do that on paper, or use some really good online tools you can get, which I use all the time. And the great thing with that is that our brain doesn't think in straight lines. So as you actually start to plan and map things out, you just join the relevant parts to the relevant nodes at that point in time. And that effectively almost becomes your plan. So your plan really should be quite a dynamic document or a series of flowcharts or whatever it may be. And if you've got a board or a leadership team, then clearly you're going to want to seek the input from those guys and girls as well. If that makes
the thing
sense.
that's important about, I think, any business plan is it doesn't become static. It doesn't just, I've done the business plan, I'll just put that in the safe and I'll never look at that again. It is a dynamic document, isn't it? It's something that's going to change and keep changing and evolving.
Yeah, and it should be a living, breathing document. And your plan today may be very different from what it is even in 6 or 8 weeks' time, because there could be massive disruptors in the marketplace. Obviously, we've got the B word at the moment. You've got potentially another US election coming up, a whole host of different things. Also, is the economy going to grow? Is it going to shrink? And so on. So your whatever plan you put in place needs to be a very dynamic, living, breathing document. And also, if necessary, which is what we've done to a degree, you shouldn't be frightened of pivoting around some key parts of your business which are really sound, and then building on those. Because you've got solid foundations to work with, then, of course, you should be able to take key aspects of that business and adapt to market conditions. And if you're running a small business, you're typically at a much bigger advantage than a larger company, because with a large company, it can be like turning a tanker. With a small one, you can be very nimble and move according to what the market actually wants. And your plan needs to be dynamic to reflect that.
A lot of people, we've done it, a lot of people, when they're on their websites, they try to show everything that they possibly do. And in fact, they then service nobody particularly well because they can do so many different things. And I have heard suggestions in the past where if you do concentrate on one, don't worry about losing that other part of the business because you'll probably maintain it and keep it anyway.
Yes.
Exactly what's happened to you.
Yes, exactly. And the other thing is as well, even if you are a bit more of a generalist in terms of your provision, it's about trying to think of all the niches or micro niches of people you're looking to target as well. And then that way, any money you spend on pay-per-click, or if you do any form of social outreach on LinkedIn and other platforms, then it can be done with much more laser precision. So it's about fundamentally knowing where you can make the biggest difference.
All right, so we've got our 5-year plan.
Yeah.
When it comes to looking at our assets, what do you mean by that?
Right, now this is brand assets rather than necessarily physical assets. And obviously we know in some cases brands can be worth a lot of money. Take Fairy Liquid, for example. What is that brand really worth? What is the Coca-Cola brand really worth, for example? But if we're running more traditional businesses or high-tech businesses where we don't have those type of budgets, it's about looking at all your assets. So it could be video, it could be social media, it could be what you send out as collateral through email, it could be your brochures, both printed and online. It could be your website, how you're represented through social media platforms. It could be about your products and the packaging and what they look like, what type of people you're aiming for. But there's also a hidden one in there as well, which by other people's definition shouldn't really be there, but I'd argue is in there. And that is what I class as your brand ambassadors. Because if you're trying to build an organization, it's not just about your customers. Yeah, your customers or clients or future clients are really important, but actually many of us get business from referrals and recommendations. And what I love doing is actually creating organizations or services where you can end up with literally armies of people out there who've bought into your vision and mission and passion, which goes back to your why again, and they actually want to effectively sell you from within. And when you also target people within individual organizations you're reaching out to, you need to be looking for the ambassadors in those organizations as well. So I regard your brand ambassadors, those people who are reaching out on your behalf, to come under that part as a business asset as well.
Do you think that's what people think they're doing when they do a lot on social media, when they go onto their LinkedIn, when they go onto their Facebook, when they have their YouTube channel, they think what they're doing are building brand ambassadors?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think also what happens a lot of the time is people will tend to play at it, and then they get frustrated because it's not giving any results. And it's because with something like this, you have to play for the long game, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Oh, you stopped talking. Yeah. All right then. Well, thank you very much for that. You saw me looking at something else and you stopped talking. I really do appreciate that. So then we've looked at our assets. What about the products then? Okay,
the products. Now that's it ties in very well with what we talked about a second ago, but it's really important you've got a really solid product mix, and in order to do that you actually need to have an understanding who your ideal target customers actually are. So for example, if you've got a core product which might be a £50,000 or $50,000 sale, which is your core product, or it might be a £10,000 or dollar one, are all your customers going to be interested in that, or is only going to be a very small number? You may well find that if you're trying to go in with just one core proposition, that you're also excluding a lot of people along the way who ultimately will become customers. So and bear in mind, even larger companies will want to test you out on something, potentially a much smaller project to start with, and which also has potentially a much lower sign-off as well. So you need to have a really balanced suite of products. One is aimed more at prospects, and some of those could be free. We give a lot of stuff away for free because it's about sharing value, sharing relationship with trust. It's also, you would typically have a product which is aimed more for higher value sales. Bear in mind that 94% of business in the UK and a similar percentage in the US are businesses employing less than 10 people. It's a really important number. And then you have your core proposition, which is the one really is, underpins your whole business. Then you may have a top tier product, which is, or equally, it could be some products which are based more around cross-sell upsells, and so on.
And now this is very interesting, and I've noticed some of the comments that are coming in while the programme's on. Angus Grady has come back and said, do not set and forget, which I've got to agree with. Angus Grady, another LinkedIn
I agree with that.
Professional, so we agree with that. Angus, thank you very much. You've got to come back on the programme. Angus was saying a lot has changed on LinkedIn just recently as well, and also on the other social platforms that we need to be aware of. David Richards, who we'll be hearing a little bit from later on, he agrees with you when it comes to mind mapping. He says he loves mind mapping, plus putting things on paper clears space in your creativity and insight, which is a good thing. And he couldn't stop there, because once he starts typing, he just got to keep going. He says segment, segment, segment.
I 100% agree.
You agree with that? Yeah. And Angus Grady back again. Social is just not just for the long game, has a massive short-term gain and long-term brand building. And Angus also tells me he's on the way over to do another programme as we speak.
I hate to agree with Angus again, but he's right.
Excellent. All right, then. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked about your assets. We've talked about your products. Let's talk a little bit about your markets, because I don't think people get that, I don't think people understand. They think it's one thing for everybody. And so markets are quite important, aren't they, to understand who you're talking to?
Yeah. Now, obviously, this goes back to a lot of what we were, to this whole LinkedIn piece around the lead generation part. Because in order to understand who you're selling to, you need to really look at some of your past clients you've served and the people who are engaging with you the most. And in terms of that, look at things like segmentation, which sounds like a horrible name, but look at some of your core skills, what people see you as offering the greatest value. And a very good way of doing that is just to imagine a Venn diagram. So take, say, 3 circles, and maybe you've got 3 core areas where you feel you're particularly strong, okay, and put each one of those in a circle. And then what you'll find is if you join those circles up, there'll be the ones which overlap in the middle are the ones that you really need to focus on first, and then there'll be one golden one right in the very middle, which is really your golden nugget. So you need to be aiming for your golden nugget first, then the ones which overlap in the middle, and then around those other 2 or 3 circles. And if you go that way first, then of course people are much more likely to buy from you because they'll regard you as being an expert in that space, and also potentially be able to charge higher rates as well. So if you're a bit of a generalist, think of it that way, about always, as was said a moment ago, segment, segment, and segment again. But there's no reason why you can't run simultaneous campaigns. You can do that across multiple segments, but just don't try and reach everyone as one campaign.
I think it's really good advice. You're listening to and watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company as always. My guest on today's show is Rupert Honeywood. And we're talking about the 12 pillars to growing a successful business. If you're trying to grow your business at the moment, are you all over the place, or are you laser focused on what you're trying to succeed? And have you stepped back for a moment and actually looked at the assets and the products and the market that you are actually working to? And are you playing to the best areas of it? More to come in just a few moments' time here on this edition of Business Connections Live. By the way, don't forget, if you would like to leave a comment, or you've got a question, or maybe just want to add to the debate, then simply go to the LinkedIn account. If you're a follower of mine on LinkedIn, just leave your comments there and we'll give you a mention here on the programme. Earlier on, I mentioned David Richards, and he was talking about segmentation when it comes to what you're trying to achieve within your business. David was on the programme a little while back. He was talking about products and services and what prospects want to buy. It was Business Connections Live 269, went out in July of this year, so not that long ago. Great show from David as well. I was talking to him about customer value and what differentiates you from selling a commodity. With the key takeaways from that particular programme, here's David Richards.
Hi, I'm David Richards, and I'm the founder of Talk About Value. What I do with companies is to help them understand how to talk about their products, services and their professional expertise in a way that their prospects and customers want to buy it. And the way I do that is help them understand how to create, validate and then communicate their genuine value in a very busy and complex marketplace. Because if they do that, they'll not only be able to sell more, they'll be able to sell more profitably and also gain customer loyalty. So remember, there are 5 real types of values that you can use to your advantage. Number one is the economic value, the financial values, the typical ROI, the customer's willingness to pay. The second is the perceived value. What are they seeing in terms of your business that you can offer them? Brand is really important in that area, for example. The third one is basically the relationships you have with the customers, particularly in the business-to-business arena. You want long-term relationships, so look at the value you're offering through that. Offering contacts, offering thought leadership, helping people make their business even more effective. The fourth one is experiential value, the value you get from working with a company, the things that you can really get out of that relationship. And fifthly, the social value you can do if you're doing something where you're saying, well, it's not just about the profit, I'm giving something back to society. You can then list those out yourself and put that on a spreadsheet, for example, but what you need to do is validate that with your customer. Value, like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder. You need to talk to your customers more regularly than you do today, because if you understand them at a really deep level, you'll understand what they really appreciate and what they'll pay for. So that's what I would say. If you want to find out more, please go to my website, talkaboutvalue.com, or go to my LinkedIn page. I'm writing articles on a regular basis about this topic, and I'm very happy to share that with people. If we run out of some of these throughout business.
Can't keep a good man down, can you? David Richards there on a previous edition of Business Connections Live 269. David also told me this week, I had a quick chat with him at the beginning or the end of last week rather, and he was saying he has now been commissioned to write his book. And have you written a book?
I have. Cheated with the help of you.
Yes.
But it is actually out there, and you can download it from our website as well.
We'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on, but David is writing a book as well. Also, if you do want to get in touch with him and you're looking for assets for your website, then David is a good guy to go talk to as well. His business is all about talking about your brand value, what you're all about, and how you can promote and market that. And if you want to find out more from David, just simply go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. There's the web address on your screen. Look out for Business Connections Live 269. In fact, if you're going to go there, you're going to find a whole. I think you've been on the program half a dozen times now.
Almost.
You're one of our Business Connections Live experts, which is great. Today we're talking about the 12 pillars to growing a successful business. Let me just remind you what we've been up to so far. A little bit of a recap. Your why, this is your motivation, your personal 5-year plan, and then your business 5-year plan, your brand assets, you need to assess and look at those, your products, your markets. Now we get onto a bit that's in red, and that's always important if it's in red. Your marketing plan and your social selling blueprint. Do people really do this? Because large organizations I've worked for, they definitely have a marketing plan and they definitely have a social selling blueprint. They know what they're trying to achieve. But do small business owners and medium-sized business owners, do they do that?
I think in the vast majority of cases it's very much a scattergun approach, and again it's the usual thing. People will tend to try a few things and then give up too easily before it has a chance to start to work, and that actually can be a challenge because a lot of it's just too much free form. But to get this right, what we tend to recommend again is using things like create flow charts, or use mind mapping again to work out your plan. And we've found that certain strategies work particularly well from putting together your marketing plan as well. Ideally, you should be certainly over the next 12 months mapping that out as tightly as you can, at least in general terms, and then look at what's working well over the last 12 months, try and predict what you feel is going to happen well over the next 12 months and go from there. And
of course, we've got the B word sitting there at the moment, which we're not going to mention, but all of that is going on in the background as well. Do you think it's affecting small business owners? We think it's definitely affecting large businesses because they're just sitting on the fence on everything at the moment.
Yes, it is, I believe, in many cases affecting small business owners, because the thing is that certain types of product or service which are regarded more as a discretionary spend. So if there's uncertainty...
Which is marketing. A lot of the time it's marketing, the soft underbelly.
That's very true. Now, the sensible businesses will actually, in times when things are perhaps quieting down for various reasons, or there's uncertainty, they will actually be spending more money on marketing, because that's a chance then to steal a march on your competition. And the big thing with marketing as well is there's a lot that you can do for free, which we've talked about before. There's also, you have got fantastic mediums which are available now, both on the social media side. Email marketing, although there's a lot of noise through email marketing, still works well if you do it right. But actually, as we talked about in the last series of programs, good old lump emails become almost so unfashionable that actually it can work extremely well, especially when supportive of some other activities you're doing as well.
Very interesting you say that. Nigel Bottrell, who is the Entrepreneur Circle, who's never been on the programme, but we know well of Nigel.
Yeah.
I received some lumpy mail from him the other day, but what was interesting, it was a fantastically produced document talking about some conference that he's running very shortly, 3-day conference. And if he gets the tickets all sold, he will make a fortune from it. But that's neither here nor there. So you've got the lumpy mail, but it's been well and truly supported by email marketing around it as well.
And also social media as well.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Very, very. I mean, it is an example of how it should be done. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah. And, he is one of these people that has got fairly big pockets and is prepared to invest. He's a serial marketeer. But he's a really good example of that. But, micro business, small business can do an awful lot. But it is about being smart with everything you're doing and trying to segment again, to return to that word, but also have some sense of plan of where you're going again. So you're spending money very wisely and also measuring your return on investment with every bit of marketing you're actually doing.
Angus has come back to us. He says social solving beats social selling all day long. Solve the problem, then the sale is seamless.
Yeah.
He is full of this, do you know that? Yeah. Angus Grady. Angus Grady, I'm sure if he's just walking around a supermarket, he's just coming up with one-liners all the time. And also David's come back and said he thinks he was very good. Yes, you were, David. Thank you very much indeed for joining on the programme. OK, so that's good. So marketing plans essential. Social selling blueprints are essential as well for a business. Do you have any advice on how to approach that? It's all very well going, you should do it. But what would be the format? What would be the way that you would approach it?
Well, obviously, we talk about the social selling blueprint, the 3 cogs. So you talk about lead generation, prospect nurturing, sales optimization. And it's really important that you understand your market, you target the right type of people that you want to reach out to, that you then put in place a really good prospect nurturing process. And that shouldn't stop at 1 or 2 steps of engagement. Typically, it takes at least 4 or 5 forms of outreach over a period of time to get any form of build-up in terms of what you're doing. And then the final part is, a third cog is really about the whole sales optimization process. So we talked a little bit earlier on that people tend to spend too much time online. Once people start to engage, have a phone conversation with them. It may be that phone conversation doesn't need to be that long to start with. It might be a 10 or 15 minute call, find out what the person really wants, and then solve the problems just mentioned a moment ago. So it may be a case that you give that person a little bit of homework to do. You may ask them to complete some sort of diagnostic, but typically, or watch a webinar or some recordings you've made, or watch Business Connections Live, of course. Mm-hmm. But from that may lead into a much more detailed conversation. That may lead into a meeting. But if you nurture people the right way and use the social selling blueprint the way you've described, you will get some really good results.
A lot of people talk about, when they're using social media, this long courting process. So you follow somebody on LinkedIn and you comment on what they say and you tell them how good they are, and then that goes on for a couple of months, and then hopefully they'll reach out and they'll comment on what you're saying, so the courting continues, and then eventually everybody loves each other and we just move on. Is that just a load of tosh?
I think it's certainly good. What I would say is that complements what we're talking about here. It's really good to do that because it does increase the awareness and all the other parts around the periphery. And again, it positions you as being an expert and someone potentially you can have a relationship with and trust. But really it is about also direct outreach as well. If you just do that by itself as a bit of a cop-out, you really need to be a lot more proactive than that.
Do you think we should just get on with it?
Yeah, fundamentally.
Fundamentally?
Yeah.
OK, all right, that's good.
But when you're going out for a date, though, you have to go through the courtship first, normally. It's always a good thing to do if you're going to end up with the right type of relationship.
Unless you're charming and attractive, and then you're straight in there. No hanging around. Maybe hanging around is one of the problems that businesses have, and maybe what we just don't know where the sweet spot is between courting and just getting on with it. This is going horribly wrong, Brits, this conversation, isn't it?
Us Brits are incredibly reserved, aren't we? So, our friends across the pond, as it were, tend to be a little bit more out there. So,
how important then is your board, your leaders and your team? How important is that then to your potential clients?
Yeah, where, for example, again, a micro business can really struggle is that you may have got one person as a board director, or you might have two, possibly, and it can be a very, very lonely place. And you also, a lot of people who run businesses are naturally entrepreneurs. They can fall in love with their own vision, and the risks with that. There's also going to be big drivers with that, and it's really important you've got sounding boards with other people you can work with. Now, if you're quite a small organisation, or you might be turning over 1 or 2 million a year and still be only a director of one, for example, it's really important you have people around you who can help. And now that could be friends, but it may be some of your friends actually just don't have the business commercial experience to be able to assist. Obviously, we're a little bit biased, but we've set up our own service. So you have people within your organisation, who are outside your organisation, but who are also CEOs of other businesses with complementary skills. And the combined wisdom of them all, as it were, can make a massive difference in terms of helping you to really understand what's working for you personally and also for your business.
Could that be a problem that many businesses have, that they're so involved, they're so inward looking, they find it difficult to break away? So, I mean, for instance, we do this program, we do it every week, and we love doing the program, we love having all the guests on, but really we could be earning a lot more money if we were doing something different.
Yes, but in your case, you're building a brand. You've got a brand already. In our case, we like to share lots of value and build a brand as well. And that is really important, because having a really strong attraction strategy, is a good way of getting business, fundamentally. All
right, then. So reflect on your board, your leaders in your teams. Let people know. There are some companies out there and some organisations, what they'll do, they will load their website with people who've just got a passing interest in it. So-and-so, like freelancers who come in and they nearly build their brand on the back of other people's names. Is that acceptable?
It can be fine, but the trouble is you've always got to remember, and I've made this mistake myself before, is you're only going to be as good as the weakest link. And if someone who's actually associated with you and you've then put them in front of a potential client, and they just haven't done a really good job, that can have massive reputational issues for your organisation as well. So when you do partner up with people, it is about making sure there's a very good fit there, whether it's a partnership or some form of associate. Just always make sure there's a really good fit, and you can add lots of value in the other way around.
Going back to what we were talking about, I know, Angus, it feels like we've got another elephant in the room, don't we? But Angus says no dithering. Yeah. Get on with it. Got to agree with you. Have you met Angus, by the way?
I may have at one of your Christmas parties.
Yeah. Well, get in touch. Get in touch. A little bit of networking going on. All right, let's talk about systems now, because I know that you are somebody who is very, very much system driven. You like taking something through a process. And hence the reason we've got the 12 pillars, hence the reason you got the 3 cogs and things like that. How important then are systems within a business? And do businesses that you come across, do people have systems, or do they think they have systems?
With a lot of one-person businesses, of course, it puts systems in place may actually be an unnecessary overhead they don't need to do apart from doing it in a very limited way. But what I'm talking about here is businesses which are looking more to scale and to grow. If you need to really build your business on really solid foundations, and you need to look at everything everyone's doing in your business and things which people are doing manually. For example, what could you automate? What systems and processes you could put in place so actually you either use tools, technology-based tools, to help you do things a lot faster, or could you, for example, outsource some of the resources that you have at the moment, which means it could be done by a lower cost resource but give you the ability to scale. But it's interesting, as something called Evernote, which you're probably very familiar with. Well, our accountant, and she happens to love Xero, which probably many businesses do, and she was saying that, interesting enough, we were one of the only companies that she deals with uses Evernote. Now, for us, and this is a really very simple way, even micro business can do this, is by actually taking all your invoices, scanning them all, automatically put them in something like Evernote. Evernote will index it for you, and then you can throw all your paper-based records. Obviously, use something like a proper accounts program as well. But it meant that we didn't have to send boxes of files to our accountants anymore, because she was able to access that account herself. And that's a very simple way of a system. But take another extreme example would be McDonald's. So we all know McDonald's. That whole business started around a whole aspect, being able to systemize the whole process within the kitchen of being able to produce burgers. So that's the other extreme. But also, if you're looking to build a business of value and to scale, then your systems need to all be fundamentally sound, because if you get that wrong, it can also be the part that breaks you as well.
Okay, then, still more to come from Rupert Honeywood in this edition of Business Connections Live. Great to have your company as always. We're live on all the social media platforms at the moment, including LinkedIn. If you have a comment, please do get in touch with us here. He's obviously got nothing to do today. Anyway, so 12 pillars to growing a successful business is what we're talking about on today's edition of Business Connections Live. My guest is Rupert Honeywood. More from him in just a few moments' time. Now, if you are looking at growing your business and you're looking to get the appropriate assets to grow your business, then why not be a guest on the program? But if you feel that you're looking for media training, crisis media management, then get in touch with us here as well. We train some of the leading UK organisations when it comes to that. We do a full day where we sit you down in the studio. We will do interviews with you. We'll do radio interviews with you. We'll do on-location reports with you. We'll show you the pitfalls and we'll highlight to you what can go horribly wrong if you don't prepare enough. If there was one piece of advice to give, preparation, preparation, preparation. And the thing that always surprises me is how unaware organisations are on the amount of information that is currently out there in the media, on social media, in the newspapers, wherever it is, about their organisations, and how they've got to have the appropriate answer to make certain that if that should come up, then they've actually got the right answer for the right question. We show you, we teach you, we inform you on how you go about getting prepared for that media interview. If you'd like more details on how to handle the media, our free training manual, and in fact one part of it anyway, is available to download on our website at businessconnectionslive.com. Just go along there, have a look at what we do, and download our little booklet. It also pops up on the front page as well. It's a little booklet. You can either buy it if you wish. You can go to Amazon. I think it's just a mere $4.99, or you can get it for free at our website at businessconnectionslive.com. Download that, have a read, and then give us a call on 01784 256 777, and let's get you in the studio here at Business Connections Live, put you through your paces so that you are better prepared for the next media interview. Because a good media interview could increase the value of your business, whereas a bad one can have real lasting damage. Get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company as always. 12 pillars to growing a successful business is what we're talking about. We've worked our way through many of the pillars so far. My guest is Rupert Honeywood. And right now, Rupert, we are on pillar number 10, your finance, knowing your numbers. Now, we all watch Dragon's Den, and they rip the whatsits out of them if they don't know their numbers. How important is it to have it at the top of your head all the time? Or is it good just to have a general feel for your finances and numbers?
I think, again, it does depend on the type of business you're running. Obviously, if it's a coaching business, your cost base may be incredibly low. So you don't need the same amount of discipline there that you would do if you're looking to build a business, again, which is looking to grow and scale. But what we're talking about really here is, obviously, there's a saying, isn't there, which really is, turnover is vanity, profitability is sanity, and cash flow is king. And actually, I can personally talk about that myself, because a few years ago I had a business which was growing absolutely astronomically, and I don't mean like doubling and doubling again. It was actually continued exponential growth. And the thing that became very obvious with that business is every time we took on a significant partner, and we were talking about really big partners here, it actually would have a massive burden on cash flow. because you would have suddenly a massive surge of calls coming in. We're talking about 20 or 30,000 calls per month, and that part can be the part that breaks you as well. So you can also grow too quickly, and in that particular case, we needed to raise about £500,000 worth of funding, and it's not because we were short of customers. We weren't. With no problem with partners either. It's a lovely business like that, but every time we took on a bigger client, you had to make sure that you'd always got the finances to support it. And one of the parts which I found really helpful at the time, and this is not something accountants talk about rather frustratingly, but actually we really highly recommend you have what we class as a rolling cash flow. What I mean by that is you plan your cash flow all the time 6 weeks ahead on a daily basis. Now, that sounds like it's a big job, but actually in most cases, if you spend 10 minutes a day just looking at what's coming out next, and if you have certain pinch points in your cash flow, then there may be various bills, for example, that you can move back a week or two. And for example, in our case, a while ago, we managed to find about £40,000 of extra cash flow just by moving payments around as to when things were actually due. And it's not so about paying people 90 days and this type of stuff, but it's just about having a dynamic, active cash flow management, and that can make a real difference. So obviously we highly recommend creating monthly management accounts, however small your business is. There's really good discipline to get into. Again, your accountant or bookkeeper should be able to do that very easily for you, and that also will tie in very well with any forecasts that you've got planned as well.
It's very interesting. So what happened to that company? I mean, because
I fell into a trap with that one, didn't I? Yeah. So, I mean, basically, the business, I'm pleased to say, does actually still continue now, but I don't personally run it. But, we had major supermarket chains and insurance companies as partners with us. But actually the challenge for us is growing too quickly, so we nearly lost a house over it. It was that severe at the time. But that was like 10 years ago now. But the learning from that was fantastic. And the great thing is now is when I work with other directors of companies, I can see from the outside in the problem areas that they can fall into, or the traps. And therefore, for me and other members of my team, it's very easy then also to spot the potential solutions. And the big thing with that is also being able to pick those up at the earliest possible stage. So if you put that in place, it stands you in good stead.
Real insightful stuff there. Your assets, your intellectual property, your assets. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, no, obviously we talked about...
Do people understand what we're talking about now? So when we talk about our assets, for instance, every one of our programs is an asset, and that will have a value. So 270 of those, even if they were just worth 50p each, I like to think they might be worth a bit more than that. But the assets, they are the intellectual property for the business, aren't they?
Yeah. With the brand assets we talked about earlier on, in many ways that has a lot to do about creating the intrinsic value, if I can say that word correctly, within your business, but also future revenue as well. So because it's your marketing collateral, all your other assets around that as well. With assets we talk about here, this is more about your intellectual property, and it's also about protecting your intellectual property. Now, there are many businesses where it's very difficult to protect your IP. So, for example, if you're a LinkedIn trainer, it's a case in point. Anyone can copy anything you're pretty well doing. Virtually nothing you'll do can be unique, because there's other people doing similar things. And it's not just that, but it's mainly if you're coaching or mentoring or anything like that, it's very easy to copy. So the way to do that is always to be innovative, continually innovate, try and stay ahead of the market all the time. And again, another very short story, but this is going back 12 years ago, just to set the scene. We were in discussions with a PLC, a very large PLC, had about 4 million members, and the company will remain nameless for obvious reasons, but we had a number of conversations with them. We thought we'd, sit with them, work with them, because they potentially would give us the leverage and we'd give them something unique they could offer to their members. And it all went very well. We had 3 meetings, and then went very quiet for about 6 months. A bit later on, about 6 months later, did a big announcement in the House of Commons, the Howler Room in the House of Commons, and they basically nicked virtually the vast majority of our concepts. Now, this happens. Now, there's nothing we could have done really to have protected that, other than not to have had the conversation with them in the first place, okay? Because, individually, any part can be copied. It's the collective proposition that makes it unique. Big thing is, though, is that organisation did 2 things for us indirectly. obviously we're very upset with them at the time, but that's by the by. The first thing is they help to expand the market. Okay. The second thing related to that is that because our product proposition, they hadn't been subject to the other 6 months worth of discussions, our product proposition has continually innovated and advanced. It made their product and service look very inferior. So it was really interesting.
So they raised the profile.
Which they did us a favour, basically.
Did you a favour, but you were able to actually go, if you thought that was good, you need to look at this.
Exactly. So, and actually that also was one of the big things that led to success, because we reached sort of national press, sort of TV and all this type of stuff at the time. So very, very exciting. But don't be frightened of competition, embrace it, and look at your assets as well. Protect what you can, other bits, just continually innovate and always try and stay a little bit ahead. And if you're running a smaller business, that's actually something that's pretty easy to do.
Do you know, I think this has been one of the most valuable programs we've done for some time. That's not putting any judgment on any of the other contributors, but I mean, what a fantastic, insightful program today has been. We're rapidly approaching the end of the program, but we do want to have a quick look at your website. I'm hoping, can you see my screen? I'm sure you can. All right, then we'll sort that out in just a moment. As far as the key takeaways are concerned, then all I need you to do, this is very difficult because I know he wants to see the screen, but he can't see it. So I tell you what, give us the key takeaways from today's programme. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, lovely. Okay.
And straight down camera number 4, say who you are and where you're from.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, I'm not going to try and reel off 12 pillars, so I think we've covered that already. But fundamentally, look at your personal why and what motivates you, what drives you. Then from a business point of view, plan really well. Make sure that you've got your product assets in place, your marketing assets. You've got a sensible business plan, marketing plan. Doesn't need to be any heavy form of documentation. Just focus on getting quick results with everything you're doing. Look at what you can systemize within your business, and also look at your scalability. And basically, there's some of those top takeaways we'd give you as far as today is concerned. It's
been a real insight. If you want to find out more, I can't show you the screen, unfortunately, but if you go on to my LinkedIn page a little bit later on today, I will be showing you the screen there. If you go to Business Growth Bureau, it is businessgrowthbureau.com. If you go onto there, you'll see that there is a whole hosts of information, your strategic partners, mentors and your advisory board in achieving excellence in leadership and in biz growth. If you go to the TV and video section, I will highlight this once again in the video that we do. Sorry, what's that? Oh, thank you. And if you go there, you'll also see as well that we've got some video that we've done from a previous program, but more about that if you go onto my LinkedIn connection on LinkedIn. And you'll be able to see it there. Rupert, it's been a real insight. If there was one thing that you feel that perhaps maybe we've missed out today, what would it be, do you think? I suppose the one part we've missed out a bit is your scalability. But we sort of covered that under the your systems anyway. But you know, if you're going to look and grow and scale your business, you do need to look at it from the ground up. It's very easy to hit what we class as an invisible glass ceiling. And we ourselves encountered that about a year or so back, where we found we couldn't expand much more without rapidly increasing our team. But do things the right way, then you can actually create a truly scalable business. Rupert, as always, it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on today's program. And I do hope you've enjoyed today's problem. It's been an absolute insight into it, those 12 pillars. And I hope you found them really, really useful as well. Don't forget, do go to Rupert's website. If you're doing that right now, that'd be fantastic. It is the Business Growth Bureau. Can I just say thank you once again for all the people that have left a comment and have been online with us as well. By the way, you may have noticed a little slate came up there talking about some Brexit clinics, the B word. And the Brexit clinics are actually taking place in the Surrey area. You may have seen Linda Bazant on BBC South just recently talking about that. She's one of the contributors. She's working with the Surrey Chambers of Commerce, and she's been at the Brexit clinics. They've got another one down at the Denbigh wine farm where they make the wine. Nice. It's rather nice. In fact, nice. It's the busiest one. It's the busiest one of all the different clinics. I wonder why. Anyway, if you want to find out more details about that, simply go to our website as well. We'll give you some details around this particular program. All right, that wraps it up for the day. Coming up on future programs, Penny Haslam, award-winning inspirational speaker. She's going to be on the program. Warren Knight, the professional speaker, is going to be coming on the program as well, talking about his upcoming book. If you'd like to come on the show as an expert contributor for Business Connections Live TV, then contact us for a copy of our media pack. And guest packages are very, very affordable. If you want to come on, it gives you assets for your website. Also, sponsorship opportunities as well for the program too. Get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live, and don't forget you can watch us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and a whole host of other social media platforms. But from me, Steve Highland, and my guest Rupert Honeywood, have yourself a great week. We'll see you again live next Monday at 12 noon. Bye for now. Bye bye.
Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel.